What if your most protected supply route could vanish in seconds? How would you ever win a war? Picture this. A massive NATO military convoy, loaded with arms and ammunition, and headed straight for Odessa, suddenly erased from existence by a single Russian Kinzhal hypersonic missile. There was no warning, no grand explosion for satellites to catch in real time. Just silence, then a blip gone from NATO's radar screens. In less than a minute, Western analysts faced a new, chilling reality. The supply lines they once called untouchable are now proven dangerously exposed. This was not a remote outpost or a warehouse behind the lines. This was a main artery, a vital supply lifeline, struck mid-transit, at a spot considered the most secure. The Kinzhal's impact was so swift and precise that no defensive system, not even America's best, had a chance to respond. By dawn, the devastation was undeniable. Dozens of containers carrying artillery, vehicles, and ammunition obliterated, their charred remains scattered across the Ukrainian landscape. Inside NATO headquarters, shockwaves rippled instantly. The silence of the missile's approach was deafening, and the aftermath left military strategists scrambling for answers. How did Russian intelligence know the exact time and coordinates? Could every convoy now be tracked and destroyed at will? For the West, it was a nightmare scenario, a reminder that in this new era of warfare, speed and precision mean nowhere is truly safe. The risk could not be higher. If logistics and supply chains are never secure, then billions of dollars in military investments, soldiers' lives, and critical strategic plans can be wiped out overnight. The psychological effect alone, knowing your most guarded convoys can be targeted any time, undermines confidence at every level of command. So, how did this single missile expose the fragile backbone of Western logistics, and what does it mean for the future of the conflict? To understand the significance, we need to break down exactly what happened that night and why it changed the rules for everyone involved. This was no ordinary missile launch. Here's how the impossible became inevitable. Picture a convoy snaking through southern Ukraine, carrying dozens of containers packed with artillery, armored vehicles, and munitions. This shipment wasn't just another resupply. It was the lifeline meant to reinforce Ukraine's southern defense, where every shell and every armored truck could tip the balance. The route chosen was near the Romanian border, a corridor Western planners considered untouchable. This was the path trusted for moving NATO equipment into Ukraine, the so-called safest artery for the coalition's high-value cargo. On this night, that illusion shattered in seconds. Russian intelligence had been watching from the very beginning. From the moment the containers were unloaded at a Romanian port, each move was meticulously tracked. Satellites peering down from the sky, drones circling above, human assets reporting from the ground. The shipment's journey across borders and through multiple transfers was not a secret, but a countdown. Then came the strike. With a thunderclap only hypersonic technology can deliver, a Russian Kinzhal missile locked onto the moving target. Its velocity was so fierce, its flight path so unpredictable, that Western air defenses, no matter how advanced, never stood a chance. Dynamic targeting meant the missile adjusted in real time, making interception impossible. Within moments, the convoy was reduced to scorched wreckage and a crater stretching for hundreds of meters. In an instant, what was supposed to be a week's worth of arms and armored vehicles disappeared from Ukraine's arsenal. But the true shock wasn't just the loss of equipment. It was the revelation that Russia's surveillance and strike capabilities reached deep into what NATO thought was safe ground. For Western strategists, the implications are chilling. Billions of dollars in aid and months of planning can be wiped out in seconds. If even the best defended, most secretive routes are vulnerable, no asset is truly safe. The risk now isn't just about lost supplies. It's about a fundamental shift in the rules of war, where speed, intelligence, and precision have erased old expectations of security. But the real drama isn't in the blast. It's in the chaos that followed. Here's where the nightmare unfolds for Western logistics. As the dust settled, Ukrainian and Western planners scrambled to react, facing more than just a supply shortage. The nightmare for logistics teams had only begun, and every next move would be a test of nerve and innovation. When your enemy can see every move you make, can you ever adapt fast enough? The Kinzhal missile strike did not just destroy a convoy. It gouged a crater deep into the ground, scattering charred debris for hundreds of meters. This was not a minor setback. It obliterated one of the West's main arteries for moving arms into Ukraine, forcing NATO and Ukrainian planners to reconsider every supply route they once thought safe. Within hours, the unthinkable became undeniable. No corridor is truly secure. NATO and Ukrainian officials, who once boasted of impenetrable supply lines, were forced to quietly admit the truth. Every convoy, every shipment, is now a potential target, no matter how well guarded. The response was immediate and panicked. Emergency meetings lit up screens in Brussels and Washington, while logistics officers scrambled to reroute shipments through unfamiliar, potentially riskier paths. Simultaneously, Western media and official channels launched a wave of disinformation, at first blaming the disaster on a fuel explosion or internal sabotage, desperately trying to downplay the scale of the loss. But the damage was too great, too visible to hide. Rumors swirled of insider leaks, possible betrayal from within NATO's own contractor ranks. The precision of the strike suggested that someone, somewhere, had fed Moscow critical details, times, coordinates, and movements, accurate down to the minute. The psychological shock rippled far beyond the blast radius. Ukrainian railway workers, suddenly aware they were on the front lines, faced panic and refusals to operate along key routes. Security forces were stretched thin, forced to choose between protecting people or cargo. Costs soared overnight as insurance, bribes, and emergency rerouting drained already strained budgets. Shipments slowed to a crawl, paralyzing the tempo of Ukraine's defense efforts. The stakes could not be higher. Failing to adapt means not only losing supplies, but also risking a collapse in morale and command effectiveness, potentially tipping the outcome of the entire war. If a single missile can break the backbone of an army's logistics, what happens when this becomes the new normal? The answer will echo far beyond the borders of Ukraine, reshaping the future of warfare worldwide. But this strike was more than a tactical blow. It was a message. The next chapter reveals how both sides race to control the narrative, and why perception now matters as much as firepower. Is the era of invisible arms convoys truly over? NATO strategists are scrambling for alternatives. One path under consideration is to reroute supplies through Poland and onward to Lviv. Yet even these corridors are shadowed by Russian surveillance. Satellites, drones, and intelligence assets reach into every option, making secrecy almost impossible. This strike may not be the last. Instead, it signals the start of a broader Russian campaign to systematically disrupt and dismantle every Western logistics route inside Ukraine. Now, every shipment faces the specter of precise targeting before it ever nears the front lines. But the consequences reach far beyond trucks and crates. This event has exposed not only vulnerabilities in hardware, but also in strategic reputation and alliance cohesion. The world saw that the West's most advanced anti-air systems could not intercept a single Kinzhal, casting doubt on the very backbone of NATO's deterrence. Each future supply run now carries immense risk. Billions of dollars in military aid, operational momentum, and the credibility of NATO itself are all on the line. Ukraine's ability to hold out may hinge on adapting faster than Russian targeting cycles can evolve. The shockwaves are being felt in European capitals. Some governments are quietly rethinking their commitment, worried about pouring resources into a conflict where their investments can be erased in moments, and where escalation could tip Europe into direct confrontation. This turning point demands urgent answers. How can Western strategies adapt, and what risks must be accepted to sustain Ukraine's defense under a new kind of threat? So what options remain on the table, and could any truly restore the balance? Let's examine the possible responses and the risks that come with them. In tomorrow's war, speed and intelligence, not firepower, decide who wins. The latest strike in southern Ukraine proved it. The battlefield is now completely transparent. Every electronic signal, every convoy, every movement, leaves a trace for satellites, drones, and artificial intelligence-driven targeting systems to find and exploit. Forget about the old idea of safe supply lines. In this new era, real-time intelligence and hypersonic weapons mean that even the most well-guarded routes are exposed. Nothing stays hidden for long. Hypersonic missiles, like the one that destroyed an entire NATO convoy, travel so fast that by the time a threat is detected, it's already too late. The cost of adapting to this reality is enormous. Logistics now means not just moving equipment, but also constantly creating decoys, changing routes, and burning through resources to stay one step ahead. Every shipment needs protection, camouflage, and disinformation campaigns to survive the journey. But it's not just about steel and trucks. Morale, speed of decision-making, and integrating cutting-edge technology into every link of the supply chain are now just as critical as firepower itself. Commanders who hesitate or fail to adapt will see their forces outpaced, not just outgunned. If the West cannot innovate in logistics and information security, it risks losing more than just equipment. Every lost shipment means lost time, lost momentum, and a shift in battlefield initiative. The psychological impact is just as deadly. When even the best protected routes are destroyed, confidence collapses and planning breaks down. Those who fail to adapt lose more than tanks or artillery. They lose the tempo of the fight, the trust of their allies, and possibly the war itself. So what's the next move for anyone hoping not to be outpaced and outgunned? Let's look at how both sides are already racing to outthink and outmaneuver one another, and what the future holds for warfare's most vulnerable backbone: logistics. In this war, seeing further and moving faster is victory. Will your side keep up? The destruction of that major NATO convoy by Russia's Kinzhal missile wasn't just a strike, it was a message to every nation watching. Overnight, the idea of a protected supply route vanished. Anything that moves, anywhere, is now a visible, vulnerable target. This is the age of real-time warfare, where intelligence moves at hypersonic speed and precision is absolute. No amount of armor or secrecy can guarantee safety if the enemy sees and reacts faster than you do. Western logistics, once considered untouchable, are suddenly exposed. Billions of dollars in assets and hard-won technological reputations are now at risk on every kilometer of track and road. For NATO and Ukraine, this is a wake-up call. The world's most advanced defenses failed to intercept, failed even to warn. This isn't just an operational setback. It's a strategic shock that undermines credibility, slows the tempo of supply, and forces leaders to rethink every plan, every assumption. Will we learn fast enough to adapt? Or will hesitation and denial let the initiative slip away? The old rules are gone. Transparency has replaced secrecy, speed trumps strength, and no one is truly safe from a watching enemy who can strike at will. To anyone who cares about military power, national security, or global stability, now is the time to demand answers and accountability. Ask uncomfortable questions. Challenge your leaders. The future of conflict is already here, and it's moving too fast for comfort. If you thought the battle lines were drawn and stable, think again. The next shock may already be in motion, and the world's response will decide what happens next.